Hi everyone, this is Nathan from Snap and welcome to another of our Snap XMP webinars. Today I'm going to be looking at the new and improved way of randomising questions. For those of you that have used older versions of Snap, randomisation existed, but it was rather cumbersome to set up, with the randomise feature actually being an add-on program that's set outside of the desktop software. And if you changed your survey or republished your survey, you had to reapply the feature. The good news is that it's now fully integrated into Snap XMP and we've made some changes to the way that it's set up and works. Hopefully you'll agree that these make it a feature that you're going to want to use. There are several different types of randomisation that you can deploy. You can set up a series of consecutive questions to be displayed randomly. This is called a randomised block of variables. And as you can see, I've given an example here of question 5, followed by 3, 2, 1 and 4. You can randomise several blocks of variables. Here the blocks or sets of questions are defined and it's those blocks which are randomised. My example here being that block 2 might appear first, followed by block 1 and then block 3. Obviously the order in which these blocks appear will change each and every time a different person answers the questionnaire or form. You can then take it up a notch by randomising these blocks as mentioned previously, but also randomising the questions within each block. My example this time has blocks 2, followed by blocks 1 and 3, but as you can see, block 2 starts off with question 6, but it's then followed by question 9 and then question 8. There is also a further advanced variation that lets you build up complex randomisation with nested blocks, but we're going to save that one for another day. So why might you want to randomise things within a survey or form? The most common reason is probably to avoid bias. Looking at the answers within a question, the options at the top of the list may get selected more often, quite simply because they are indeed at the top of the list and as such are quicker to select. In the case of a set of grid questions, especially when it's a larger set like I've got today, the danger is that you start to lose the attention of your respondents as they start moving down the list. Switching the order of the sub-questions means that it's not the same questions each time that are left near the bottom, which might end up not getting answered or perhaps just getting a token tick without much thought as to what the actual questions and answers mean. Now, of course, another argument might be that if this is a consideration, then your list of sub-questions is probably too long in the first place. But it's not always so easy to simply remove questions as, of course, sometimes you need to include them in your survey. So instead, we need to think of ways to wake people back up. One such way would be to split the large group into two. In my example, I've simply switched out one of the grid next questions and turned that into a grid first, and then removed the main question text, but left the code labels, the answer text, on display. This is beneficial for a number of reasons. First off, in a larger set of grid questions, it's quite likely that the answer code, such as very poor to very good, will end up dropping off the top of the page as you scroll down. The danger is the respondent then loses track as to what each of the checkboxes actually represents. But even more so than that, I've seen many surveys when I'm filling in a series of very good to very poor type questions, and as I'm scrolling down the page, I've suddenly realised that actually it makes no sense to give a response of very good. If someone was to ask me that same question outright, without perhaps prompting me with the answer set, then perhaps it might be that I'm more likely to respond with very satisfied or something equivalent. So by displaying the list of answer codes partway down, it gives the survey designer the chance to reassess whether the current answers still work, or perhaps they need to realign them based on the question text further down the page. Anyway, that was just an aside. This larger set of questions being randomised is then exaggerated with such examples including product testing and also concept testing. Here an example question might be, we'd like you to answer some questions based on these different brands of toothpaste, and rather than always displaying the cheapest or the most expensive first, or perhaps the own brand first and then followed on by the more leading brands, the different brands are actually presented in a different order each and every time a different respondent fills in the survey. A similar idea for concept testing might be to do with cars. So here you might be presented with some different car specifications and asked to give your views about these different variations. Again, there may be 4 or 5 different variations of car specification. One might have built-in sat-nav and driverless parking. Another might have additional storage options and an extended driving range. By presenting these variations in a different order each time, you're lessening any impact that one particular variation might have on the next one, which might display. Okay, let's see some of this in action. I'm going to be using a dummy survey which very much is designed to try and make it obvious what's going in the background. You can see that I have left the question numbers on display. As we come further down the page, I'm going to be talking about different blocks of questions, and to try and make it obvious what's going on, I've got block 1, which has got a blue border, block 2 has got an orange border, 3, etc, etc. So I've got a number of different blocks, all with different colours. We've also got, in brackets, the question numbers. Now again, this is to try and make it obvious whether these are in the right order or a random order. So question 10, 11, 12 is actually 1, 2 and 3 of block 2. If we then look at 13, 14, 15, that's also again block questions 1, 2 and 3 of block 3. And you can see I've also added additional text to again make it obvious that question 14 belongs to block 3. So I appreciate today's survey isn't quite as swanky as some of my usual examples in the webinars that I do, but hopefully it will help you with the understanding of what's kind of going on in the background. I'll go ahead and run the survey, and I've already got one waiting in my browser for me. As I said, we're going to be looking at 3 main types of randomisation today. So first of all, we're going to be looking at randomising the questions. So I've got questions 1 to 5, but they're going to be displayed in a random order. We'll then look at randomising different blocks of questions. So block 2, block 1, block 3, with the questions themselves being in a fixed order. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then the third one will be randomising those blocks, but this time also randomising the questions within the blocks. You can see block 1 starts with maybe question 3, then back to question 1, then jumps to question 4. So if we look at the first section, so here we're randomising the first 5 questions. Question 6, I've always left the question at the end just to sort of try and make the survey as realistic as possible. So it's just the questions 1 to 5 that are being randomised here. So here we've got question 3, jumps to question 1, then jumps to question 4. Just to prove that this is in fact doing what I'm suggesting it's doing, if I rerun this survey again, so that one started with question 3 to begin with, this time it started with question 1 and then jumped to question 5. So here we've got the actual questions 1 to 5 being randomised. I've also added some randomisation to the actual answer text. So here we've got questions A, B, C and D and E. Questions A, B and C are in a sequential order, so it's the lowest number up to the highest number. So C is the same and so is B, but you can see that I've added some additional randomisation of the answer labels to questions E and also D. So question E, it starts the lowest, then it goes to the next in line, then it jumps to the highest, whilst for question D it starts in the middle and actually ends in the lowest. So let's go back into the desktop software to look at how this is set up. So we're going to be looking at questions 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. As I said, we've got question 6 there as well, but that one's not going to be part of the randomisation. So initially I'll click on the randomise icon. So we have nothing set up at the moment, so we're going to add some randomisation. And we're looking at a randomised block of variables, so a randomised block of questions, starting off with question number 1, which is actually question A, and ending on question number 5, which is the question text of question E. And that's all there is to it. If we click OK, you can see it tells you down here that we're taking a block of variables and they're going to be swapped around, and it's questions 1 to question 5. As mentioned, I have added additionally some randomisation to the code labels of questions D and E. So I can also just, whilst I'm here, right click into your variable properties, and for ordering we can set that to random. So questions 1 to 5 will be randomised, but also the answers within question D and E, 4 and 5, will also be randomised. If we then come down to the next section, so this is where we're going to be looking at randomising sets of questions. So as I said, in my case, I've got different colours denoting the different sections. So the blue section is block 1, block 2 is orange, down to block 4, which is burgundy. And although the blocks will be randomised, the actual questions themselves will remain in the same order. So it might be that block 2 appears first, but it will always be questions 10, 11, 12. And as I said, to make it obvious what's going on, I've actually in brackets added the original order of them. If I now move into the live survey to see this in action. So starting off, we have block 1, followed by block 3, followed by 4 and block 2. So the different blocks are randomised, but the actual questions within the blocks are in their original order. So we've got 10, 11, 12, which is actually questions 1, 2 and 3 of that block. Back up to block 4, 16, 17, 18, again questions 1, 2 and 3 of that block. So let's move back into the desktop software to see how this one's set up. So I said we're starting off with question 7, block 1. It doesn't actually matter what you clicked on when we set the randomise up. Obviously it's useful to have the screen open at the relevant section, but if we go up to the randomise icon, again we're going to add some more, and this time we're going to look at randomising several blocks of questions. So that's specifying what kind of randomisation we're doing. What we now need to do is specify which questions form block 1, which questions form block 2. So we're going to add. So it's going to be a fixed block of variables starting at my sort of header text coming down to question number 9. So my header text is N12 and question 9 is question 9. That's my first block. If we then add another block, again another fixed block, looking at section 2 or header 2, which is N13, coming down to question 12. Just got a few more to do. Got block 3. And my advice when you're setting this up for your actual live survey, it can get quite confusing to sort of keep a track of which questions are which and making sure you're including the right questions in the block. So I would personally add some text like I've done on mine, just for your sort of setting up and testing purposes. Once you're happy that it's all working as you think it is, or as it should be, you can then go back and remove these additional information text. And then finally I've got block 4. Again, another fixed block. Okay, and if I go back to the original one, which is questions 1 to 5, you can see this is a block of variables to be swapped around, questions 1 to 5. If we then look at the one we're just doing now, it's 4 sort of sub-blocks, all to be swapped around. And if we look at the individual blocks, they're going to be in their natural order. So as I said, it's questions 7, 8, 9, which is kind of 1, 2 and 3. For our last section, which is going to be blocks 5, 6, 7 and 8. Again, we are going to randomise the blocks, but this time we're also going to randomise the questions within that block. So for block 8, it may well be that question 30 appears first, followed by 31, followed by 29. So it might go effectively 2, 3, 1. Then we might jump to perhaps block 6. That one might be in the normal sequential order of 1, 2, 3. Then it might jump back to question 5, and that might be basically 2, 3, 1 again. So again, let's have a look at this in action in the actual live survey. If we come on to the final section, so here we've got block 8, so it's block 8 before it's block 6. Actually, this particular example has gone in the normal sequential order, so questions 1, 2 and 3, so 29, 30 and 31. We come down to block 6. This one, the actual questions are being randomised again, this time appearing in a slightly jumbled up order, etc, etc. And this one ends on block 5. Again, just to prove this is working, if I rerun this entire survey, come down to the last option again, it actually ends on block 7. Now, for the conspiracy theorists amongst us, remember nothing is ever really random. But let's head back into Snap Desktop just to see how that final example was set up. So we're looking at, as I said, blocks 5 all the way down to block 8. So back into my randomise icon. Again, I'm going to add some new randomisation. So this time it's going to be, we're going to randomise several blocks as we were before. We then specify our different, what we call child blocks. So this time, rather than a fixed block, it's going to be a randomised block. Starting off with my header for block 5, which was N19, note number 19, and ending with question 22. Now, of course, we are randomising this block. What we don't want is my header to end up randomly in the middle of question 20, 21 or 22. The header should always be at the top of that section. It's just the questions within that block that we want randomised. So when it's a randomised block of variables, what we can also do is specify that N19, which was my sort of subheader, is always going to be excluded from the randomisation. It will remain at the top. So that's block 5. If we then, again, a randomised block, starting off with block 6, the header, going down to question 25, again excluding the subheader. Just got 2 more to go. So we have block 7, coming down to question 28. And then the very last one will be block number 8. And finally removing or excluding N22. Now, if I just extend this box out a little bit, now, when setting this up for your live survey, as I said, you can easily get confused as to which questions belong to which block. So occasionally there might be the danger that you've accidentally overlapped some of these blocks. So I'm going to go into my second to last block, which currently ends on 28. The final block starts at 29. If I do a little bit of overlapping, so effectively try and include a question from block 8, you can see I get a red cross, which basically tells me that something isn't going to work. So we can't randomise questions in 2 blocks at the same time because they belong to different sections. If I click OK, you also get a little notification at the top on the actual icon. So I can go in and just make that correction. If I pop that back to question 28, that should be fine. You may well also get those crosses if you perhaps got some routing set up in the survey. So let's take that first example, question 5, or 1 to 5 should I say. We've set these questions to be completely randomised, but it may well be that we've got some routing which says only make question 5 pop up if they choose perhaps option number 2. So, of course, we've just said question 5 may well appear before question 1. So again, if we had routing set up like that, there would be some notifications in here to tell us that something's conflicting. Okay, so hopefully that's given you a good introduction to how you might incorporate randomization into your projects. And for those of you that have used the randomize feature in older versions of our software, I hope you agree that doing it in XMP is a lot more efficient and also opens up a few new possibilities in terms of your design. As ever, there is additional support out there for you. The QR code on the left will direct you to the randomization page on our support hub. The middle QR code will take you to a page on the ordering of answer labels. And then I'd be grateful if you would take 2 minutes to complete our short survey about today's webinar. This can be accessed via the QR code on the right. Thank you for joining me, and we'll hopefully see you again soon.